You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
We have a very rare occasion today. So I'm actually publishing a podcast that I didn't record. I was actually interviewed by a chiropractor who has a whole wellness-based farm. His podcast is called the Wellness Farmers Podcast. Really great guy, lives between the US and I believe Argentina, does a lot of holistic farming, really smart guy. He basically wanted to see if I would come on and share a lot of what I do in my own practice and really a lot of what I do in my own life and how I look for always the underlying root cause. Because remember, this type of education is not taught in the United States. I don't care if you go to the best conventional medicine, naturopathic medicine, or any type of medicine school, you are not going to learn the true deeper underlying root cause here in the United States. You need to look more towards Europe. You need to look more towards Ayurvedic medicine in India and Sri Lanka, more towards traditional Chinese medicine in China. So I reveal a lot of those things on the podcast today. I talk a lot about thyroid. I talk a lot about energy. I talk a lot about whole food, good nutrition. I give you a little bit about my backstory. I talk about how to kind of decrease input and stress to get more out of life. I think you're going to enjoy it, so stay tuned. And again, if you have any questions on this, any follow-ups, feel free to leave them at stephencabral.com/ask Cabral. Enjoy, everyone.
Today is going to be an awesome episode of the Wellness Farmer Podcast. I'm actually very excited because I'm bringing on a guest that I actually listen to. So this is a podcast that I actually listen to the majority of his episodes, and now I actually have him as a guest on this podcast for all you listeners to actually learn a little bit about how I learn a lot about the information that I learn about. So it's Stephen Cabral. He's actually going to be talking to us about many things. He's a naturopathic doctor with just tons of information and great things to say. So, I'm going to let him actually talk a little bit and actually let him introduce himself so you can get to know him just a little bit better before we jump into the main topic. So, Stephen, if you want to take a couple of minutes and kind of explain who you are to my listeners and let them know how you got to where you are today, that winding path that we all take to get to where we are today. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes.
Sure. So I'm Stephen Cabral. I own two practices in Boston, Massachusetts. So I'm a naturopathic doctor by education, and basically a naturopathic doctor is almost like a general practitioner, and then you get to specialize in certain things in order to help the people that you are looking to most help. So the interesting thing with me is that I didn't ever plan as a kid to get into natural medicine. It was not, something that was even on my radar for what I wanted to do. I think I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was like 8 years old, and that was my big thing. And what happened was when I was 17 years old, I got extremely sick. I lived right outside of Boston, Massachusetts when I was growing up, so I went to the very best conventional medicine doctors in the world. So in Boston, we have 3 out of the top 10 hospitals literally in the United States. But even after seeing 50 different doctors, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me because all my blood work looked fine. So even though my lymph nodes were swollen literally to the size of golf balls, no one could figure out what it was that was shutting down my immune system that was not allowing me to ever get rid of all of this nasal congestion and sore throat. I couldn't swallow. My eyes were crusted together. I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without my heart rate getting to 150, 160 beats per minute just after about 6 steps, and I would have to literally lie down after like 6 steps, let my heart rate come back down, come back to the top of the stairs. I left school for months at a time, and it was debilitating. Obviously, there was no hope. I wasn't given any hope to get well because no one could figure out what was wrong with me. So this went on for quite some time, longer than I would have cared for it to happen. And then I eventually said, you know what? I'm a pretty stubborn guy. So I said, there's no way I'm not going to live like this for the rest of my life. And I'm not going to die at a young age because I can't figure out what's going on. And I said, there's just too much I want to do in life, too much I want to accomplish. And this is not how I picture myself living. So I went to my local public library as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid. And I literally just started reading about health. I didn't know where to begin because I didn't know what was wrong with me. And then gradually I found out about this thing called alternative medicine. As I always like to say, and you'll hear, I believe there is no alternative to alternative medicine. That's it. There's no alternative. If you want to get well, bottom line is you need to seek out someone that's going to look for these underlying root causes. And that's what I eventually did. It was a long path, much longer than it needed to be, as I found out obviously later in life through my journey. And so what I did was I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school for this. More people need to know about this. It holds all of the answers. No matter what you're struggling with, I guarantee you can get well. It won't always be simple and it won't always be straightforward, but if you want it, you can absolutely get well. So my job was this. As a naturopathic doctor, I literally studied and interned all over the world. I studied in China, India, Sri Lanka, Europe, and the United States. And I simply studied everything, the best of the best practitioners, no ego at all. Who's the best in traditional Chinese medicine? Who's the best in Ayurvedic medicine, functional medicine, and so on, so that when people come to me in my practice, I say, you don't need to fit into my specialty, whatever it is. There's not one box that you need to fit into. What I'm going to do is I'm going to personalize my medicine, what I'm going to do for you around what you're coming in with now. And I believe that's why we're able to help people get the results that they're looking for, no matter how long they struggled for. Usually, people don't come to see me, unfortunately, until they've exhausted all other possibilities. But I'm very happy with how things have gone.
And that's usually how it seems because I'm a chiropractor. That's usually what it is. They've tried everything. They have nothing else to do, so they come to me, and then we try and we find the cause. And that's what I love about what you said. It's more than just fitting people into a box, because everybody is completely different. They react different to everything. The physiology is the same, but it reacts to different things in different ways. And it all depends on how many stressors you have. And that's one of the reasons why I like medicine so much, because everybody is different. Every case is different. You're never going to have the same case. And I love how you're doing that, and you're helping so many people. And not just through your clinics, but like I said, your podcast and all the great information that's coming out. I more than appreciate all the work you're doing. But today I'd like to talk about some of the things that I listened to on your podcast I thought were really interesting. One of the things was heavy metal toxicity and the foods that detox them. That's what really, the foods that actually detox them. Could you talk about that for a little bit and kind of help my listeners understand the main issues with heavy metal toxicity and how they can find things in their diet to actually get rid of them, not have to go through normal medicine to actually detoxify, just detoxify through foods?
Absolutely. So, one of the important things to remember is that a true, so I don't want to put down conventional medicine, and I don't want to put down, what we have is what we'll call it your traditional MD. Because if you're in an acute-based situation where it takes life-saving measures, meaning let's say you have a staph infection, or you're 70 years old and you have bilateral pneumonia, or you're having a heart attack or a stroke, go to your emergency room, get help. I'm not talking about that at all. But for everything else, literally everything else, you have to work with someone who's a qualified natural health practitioner. I know so many great chiropractors, so many great just overall nutritionists who know about functional medicine, and they can help you with this path, because the bottom line is this, that we're suffering today from diseases of chronic illness. That means there's no acute issue, meaning no one's going to die tomorrow. What we're looking at is this slow degradation of our body. And there's all these underlying root causes that are creating this, meaning so in my family, autoimmune issues run rampant. And when I was just a teenager, I was starting to get rheumatoid arthritis. My thumbs I couldn't grip anything. My fingers were killing me, all these different things. But, keep in mind, one person gets rheumatoid arthritis, another gets Hashimoto's thyroiditis, another person gets MS, another person gets lupus or psoriasis or eczema or psoriatic arthritis. So that's our genetics. Remember, genetics is a cop-out saying it's genetic. Everyone in my family has high cholesterol. Well, it just means everyone is susceptible to that. That doesn't mean you need to live with it, and you certainly don't need to take a statin. What you need to look at is, why do you have high cholesterol? There's only about a half a dozen reasons why. Or why do you have Hashimoto's, and all these different things. So remember, yes, all of this expresses itself differently, but you always have to find the underlying root cause. And typically, I posted on Instagram yesterday as well. I do a lot of that. Again, me, it's just about my message, just getting this out to as many people as possible, getting them to understand that there is hope for everyone. And one of those things that you talked about is heavy metals. So everyone has to understand that there's over 77,000 man-made synthetic chemicals in the environment. Our bodies were not physiologically equipped to remove mercury, aluminum, lead, arsenic, all of these things that we get naturally from the environment. And I should say unnaturally. And it doesn't matter where you live. I always like to share this example. When I was over studying in India on the second time I was there, I was in the foothills of the Himalayas, and I was studying with a really amazing Ayurvedic doctor. And we took his motorbike up to the Himalayas. We're in there, we're looking at the herbs, we're looking at what they're used for specifically. And we see a yogi over there. He's right next to the river. And he literally has a treehouse. And he's just wearing a loincloth. I couldn't make this up if I was trying. And he's just hanging out there, bathing in the Ganges. And he said, even that guy over there, even that yogi who lives in the purest environment in the entire world, still has more toxins in him than even the closest person in a city 100 years ago. And that's because all of this waste, all this plastic, all these things is literally in the air we breathe, in the water we drink, in the foods that we eat, the pesticides, all of those things. We need to be detoxifying literally on a daily basis. And so when I find people with thyroid issues, or I find people with all these random hard-to-treat diseases, I look at what are all these toxins that they're holding on to. And we can do a simple hair tissue mineral analysis, or we can do a urine-based test that looks for a lot of these heavy metals, or candida, or bacterial overgrowth in the gut. So the interesting thing, though, is when you find the lead, the mercury, the aluminum, that you can use simple things like, again, biofilm disruptors, which are simply enzymes that help remove those, and using foods like cracked cell chlorella, or just basically chlorella, because all chlorella sold now, which is basically an algae, is sold as the cracked cell form, which is usable, bioavailable, and then adding in something very simple called cilantro. And so when you have a handful of cilantro, whether you juice it or put it on a salad or however you want to eat it, literally within 42 days, so 6 weeks, if you just do cracked cell chlorella and you just do the cilantro, the studies have shown you're going to eliminate 87% of lead in your body, 91% of the mercury, and 74% of the aluminum in just 6 weeks. So I find that to be an amazing statistic, and if you do a little bit more with vitamin C and a few other things, you're going to boost that to a much higher degree, or something like a far infrared sauna. So again, food always comes first, but then understanding that a lot of times some nutritional supplements are needed only because we're fighting against a onslaught of synthetic man-made chemicals that our body just needs more help with. That's it.
What were the two things, one more time? The
chlorella?
Chlorella, that's what it was, yeah.
And cilantro. If you can only do two things, you do that.
Awesome. And yeah, most things actually do start with food. And I've seen that most people with me also is they start to see the huge changes when they change their diet. And yeah, it's a great way to detoxify. It's a great way to flush inflammation. That's another thing you were talking about that I really liked. And you talked about some great ways to help flush inflammation from your body. Would you like to kind of go into a little bit more about how we can actually do that too? Other ways we can help flush the inflammation from our body. One way is by foods and detoxifying ourselves. But what's the other ways that you've learned to flush inflammation from the body?
Yeah, absolutely. This is when nothing beats food, right? It's always food first. If you can't change your nutrition, you're always going to have your back up against the wall, because the food you put into your body is the main source of either life-giving or life-taking away, right? Because you're either eating foods just doused with pesticides, which is essentially bug spray. Nobody calls it what it is, but you're eating bug spray when you eat these pesticides. And bug spray is actually a neurotoxin. That means bugs stay away from these plants, because if they eat these neurotoxins, if they eat the bug spray, they die. It shuts down their nervous system. Well, when they test it on humans, they test it at micro doses, and they don't test it at what's happening over years of accumulating this in our systems. That's where the issues are. Remember, the reason we don't know any of these things, we don't attribute it to the toxicities to any of these things, is because one small dose, typically no big deal. A larger dose, meaning like if you were exposed, and we see this all the time, to poor water or something like that, then you get sick right away. But what happens after you've been eating these things and they're stuck in your adipose tissue, which is basically your fat? So what happens is you take these things into your body. Your body can't deal with it all at once because your liver is what essentially has to detoxify it. It goes through something called phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. I'm not going to bore you with that. But what happens is your liver filters your blood. So basically it cleans all the blood in your body every 6 minutes, okay? So if it can't get it during that first pass, what happens is your body will sometimes store it away in fat tissue. And it does that to keep it basically from harming the rest of your body. It just stores it away there. Well, what happens, though, when you're losing weight, you're burning body fat, you start to feel terrible. A lot of times it's because these toxins are then released back in your bloodstream, and you need to be able to better eliminate them. That's why, we do a detox here that just works so amazingly well. The reason is it's based on food, and the other thing is it just gives your body a little bit more of a boost. So that works incredibly well. Now, inflammation is a byproduct. So I always like to tell people, there's so much talk about using turmeric right now, or all these natural anti-inflammatories, which I think is great. But always remember, turmeric is not a root cause of a disease. Inflammation is not the root cause of a disease. So turmeric treating inflammation is treating a symptom. Inflammation is still a symptom. Is it a symptom that we need to get rid of? Absolutely. So the turmeric can help while we're working on these root causes of causing the inflammation. So what I like to do is we need to follow first an anti-inflammatory diet food. And the two biggest inflammatory foods are gluten and dairy. If you can only eliminate two foods, now they're big ones, right? But if you can only eliminate two, those are your two big ones.
And that's what I usually tell most people. Dairy, and start with gluten and dairy. Yeah, that's the best way to help detoxify and decrease inflammation in the body. Now,
especially if you have an autoimmune issue or thyroid issue, that's just imperative that you do that.
For sure. And there's other things, there's other ways to kind of decrease inflammation, detoxify ourselves, because there's many different toxins. We have a lot of internal toxins too, just the way we talk to ourselves, and we cause a lot of internal toxicity. And I really like how you talk about minimalism, simplifying your life. I think that's one of the most important things to actually stay healthy, is to realize that the more simple your life is, the more healthy you will be. And I like how you use the word minimalism, and you used that as actually how to be happy with less. Can you kind of explain your whole theory around minimalism?
Sure. Well, it came about really, let's say over the last 5 years of really looking into people who responded really well to treatments and people who didn't get the results that they were hoping for. And so we have something called the Dr. Cabral Detox. If I don't get to work with someone in practice, I always tell people the Dr. Cabral Detox can get you about 80% of really what you need, which is enough for most people. That's plenty. So that works exceptionally well. Who are the only people, like 1 out of 100 people, who aren't going to get well? So I started to look at this and I said, there's no reason this person should not be getting better. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. And there's one main type of person, only one main type of person. People who cannot let go of anger. They can't let it go. There's this, whether it's childhood-based, they're in a bad relationship right now, they're in a really poor work environment. No amount of good food, no amount of detoxification, no amount of supplementation, although supplementation can help to kind of decrease that anger and that anxiety and all those things. Because what happens is this. When you get angry, it creates a whole different environment in your body. It actually flips a switch that all of us have, but it creates a harder push on what's called the sympathetic nervous system. So that means fight or flight. When your body is in a higher amount of fight or flight, something happens. And what happens is this. Your body becomes more catabolic. It starts to break down to a much greater degree, and you start to create more adrenaline and more cortisol. When those things happen, you begin to age at a much faster rate, and you don't rebuild the body. You don't heal the body. Your immune system gets actually shut off. They show secretory IgA levels, which is basically all the mucosa, the mucus in the body, the first layer of defense, gets shut down. You can't get well. So a big part of what a naturopathic doctor does is they treat the whole person. You can't just give supplements. You can't just give food. You need to talk about exercise. You need to talk about detoxification. And you need to talk about the mind and emotions. So what we're looking to do is we're not just treating the physiology of the person, the body. We have to treat the psychology, because your psychology, meaning your brain, is what eventually changes your physiology as well. And we know this because your brain is connected to your spinal cord, and your spinal cord contains all these nerve endings right off your spine that innervate all of the nerves in your body, your sympathetic system nerves, your fight or flight nerves, or your calming parasympathetic nervous system nerves. You control that as well through your brain, which is why they're showing so much great research on meditation, on hatha yoga, gentle yoga, not the hardcore one, Tai Chi, Qigong. So when you start to understand this, it does a tremendous, tremendous benefit for your body and healing as well. That's when we see the big change happen. And also keep in mind that never more have we had more distractions in life, more things to worry about, and more stress. So by practicing things like minimalism doesn't mean giving up everything and living kind of like as a monk or a pauper or something like that. What it means is that always thinking about what you're taking on, all of your decisions in life. Like, is this bringing value to my life? If not, do I need to do that relationship-wise, friends-wise, going out-wise, all of these things? Because as I like to say, one of the things is when you look at, like, if you look at my computer, well, some of the reasons why it runs slow and it freezes sometimes is I keep too many internet tabs open because I'm doing research and I'm looking at this and that, and I get a different idea. So I call that bandwidth. Eventually, my computer runs out of bandwidth. It can't keep up. And what I need to do in order to get back my computing power is to basically a system reset. I need to go on an elimination diet, like for the real world. I need to start decreasing stress and decreasing input. It's only when you start decreasing input can you then re-increase output. And let me try to make a little bit more sense. When you decrease input, you start to increase your own energy because you're less stressed. You worry about less things. There's less to worry about. That then allows you to have the energy to better respond to life's demands. You change. And it's an amazing transformation that takes place with people that I see in my practice.
Oh, for sure. And I completely agree that the importance of simplifying one's life is a huge part of overall health. And that's another thing. People, when they don't simplify their life, they try to make everything perfect. No one's perfect. We'll never be perfect. We need to realize that we'll never be perfect, and things around us are not perfect. We can't control everything in a perfect manner. We just kind of have to let things be. And you talk about that too, that what to do when being perfect isn't possible. And as we know, perfect is never possible. So how are ways that we can realize, like, how can we control what we can control, our circle of influence, and not worry about the things that we really just can't control? It's out of our circle of influence. How can we better do that? When I liked that episode quite a bit, how you explained all of that.
Yeah, so these are all, and again, like all these podcasts are just daily. They're really simple, straightforward. They're about 10, 12 minutes long, and they just talk about one topic, to the point. So you can just go to stephencabral.com/podcast and just kind of check those out for yourself. But what I want to do is I want to give you a little synopsis of that one. So it's, the title of that one was When Being Perfect Isn't Possible, what to do. And the big thing is this, is that we're so hard on ourselves, right? Because we've kind of grown up, especially in the U.S., with this mentality that there's always a competition in life. You always have to beat out something, or that's why I don't love exercise, like group classes today, is because you always have to compete against the next person next to you. You always have to beat your last workout. You always have to better your best. And there is an upper limit to that. It's really challenging to always look at life that way, where life doesn't have to be a competition. You can look at, basically, it's you versus you, but it's really you through a growing process. And I always like to let people know that you can't be too hard on yourselves because you're doing the best you can with the current information that you have. Meaning, like, sure, you'd like to do better, and you would do better probably if you had a little bit better information. So that only comes with practice. And that's why I always say, get started. Meaning, like, you're not going to get perfect whether you're trying to improve an illness that you have right now or trying to lose the weight or feel better, right? Get more energy, whatever it might be, or just be a better parent. But you have to just start reading the books, listening to the podcasts like this one right here. And just understanding that you're going to start to get better the more you become aware of it. So the first step is just becoming aware that you're not exactly where you want to be. And then you're going to start studying the things of how you can become better, then catching yourself when you're doing the incorrect thing, and then starting to improve. And when you mess up, that's okay. That's part of life. There truly is this ebb and flow to life. Like we would go through these great periods, and then it's a little bit of a dip. And it's during those dips that we want to just try to pull ourselves out of that faster. Not to never get into the dips. That's unavoidable. That's part of life. And the other thing is, in a bad situation, you're going to make your best relative choice. Like, I understand that life is not all rainbows and sunshine. Like, I get that. I'm totally not, someone who's just kind of like sitting up there on cloud nine all the time and be like, no, you just need to like breathe your way through it. That's great. And that does work, and you should try it. However, when you're stuck in a situation where you can't eat the best food, you eat the best relative choice. If everyone's out for pizza, well, what do they have at the place that isn't pizza? Can you do something else? Or is that just kind of your one cheat meal for the week? So it's looking at these best relative choices that you can say, you know what? It wasn't my best choice. It wasn't my best day, but I made a good relative choice. And I know what to do next time. Meaning like, okay, you mess up once, just learn from it. What would you do if you were in that situation again? What would the better choice be? If you can do that, you're getting so far ahead of the game.
Perfect. And that's what it is. I mean, you just one step at a time. And that's the problem. Many people, it's so hard for them to take that first step. I see it so often where that first step, they could just take that first step and see the progress you can make after that first step. Then it gets easier and easier to move. And we're always going to have those falls. There's just no way we wouldn't grow if we didn't have falls. If there was always ups in life, we wouldn't be growing. We need to have those falls we can get up, learn from them, and continue to grow. Love what you say. And before we finalize, there's so many people talking about thyroid issues. I mean, it's funny. When I was a kid, no one even knew what the thyroid was. Nowadays, it's everywhere. It seems like the majority of people know what it is or have some type of a problem with their thyroid. And it's not just females; it's males too. We're seeing a lot more males with thyroid issues. Can you kind of explain what you think it is and just kind of let us know what your thoughts are on this huge problem with thyroid issues?
Sure. And, I see this at least once a week in my practice. Usually it's Hashimoto's thyroiditis, sometimes Graves', mostly hypothyroid, low thyroid. You know what? This is not a hard case to crack. It's already been cracked. It's multiple different things, and that's why it can be a lot of confusion around it. You just need to figure out what is that underlying root cause for you. So one is you have this heavy metal toxicity, especially cadmium. So cadmium is something that no one's ever really heard of, but cadmium is in a lot of processed foods. We are low on iodine because we're drinking water that's been chlorinated. That will wipe out a lot of iodine. We are also getting it from our showers if we're not using a shower filter that's coming in. Gluten mimics a specific autoimmune-based issue that can actually have the thyroid. So the thyroid, in autoimmune-based issues, especially with Hashimoto's, your thyroid's not like needlessly attacking itself for no reason. You can't say it's genetic. Sure, it's genetic. It's like other people in your family have it, but there's always a cause for that. So you have to look at those specific causes. All like 90+% of all autoimmune diseases have been tied to increased intestinal permeability, which is basically aka leaky gut. So you have these gluten-based molecules moving through. You have dairy-based molecules. You have protein molecules moving through. It's reactivating. It's turning on the immune system to a much higher degree, causing inflammation. Your Achilles heel is your thyroid. Someone else's might be the myelin sheath of their nervous system with MS or something like that. So you have to understand, that's why it's attacking you. Another thing with thyroid is with stress. I actually teach this all the time to practitioners as well, is that when you are in that fight or flight, when you're in that stress-based mode, your body produces something called norepinephrine. And your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland in your brain tell your body after your adrenal medulla has made the signal, that's basically the adrenal glands, said, okay, we're under stress here. We're going to actually start to slow the thyroid. We're going to stop a lot of this conversion from TSH to T4. And then when we start to produce cortisol or glucocorticoids, we actually turn or can stop the conversion of T4 to activated T3. And T3 is the main form of thyroid that we need inside those cells. Or we can change that to reverse T3, which is usable by the cells. So now we can see how the adrenal glands, the HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, block and lower thyroid function. Now it does that for a very good reason. The body's not malfunctioning whatsoever. What happens is, during times of stress, it makes a lot of sense to slow your metabolism. And the reason it would do that is because then you need to consume less calories. It slows metabolic process because your body thinks it's, well, maybe there's famine, maybe there's war, maybe there's drought. And so that's a very smart process by your body. So now we need to clean up the gut, clean up the diet, get rid of some of those toxins, and then add back in selenium, add back in iodine, so that those things help with actual thyroid conversion and actual thyroid, and your thyroid's happy again. As long as it hasn't been destroyed from the autoimmune-based issue, I mean, we get people off medications and all those things by using a good whole food and nutritional supplements and detoxification like all the time. And remember, like, a lot of people are like, no, it's just Hashimoto's runs in my family. And I say, I understand that, but you've been kind of brainwashed to believe that this is something you need to live with for the rest of your life. And it's simply not the case. If I can leave one thing with people, it's that you don't need to work with me. You don't need to follow my particular things. But what you do need to understand is that there is always a reason, always, that your body is suffering from dis-ease. Not a disease, but dis-ease. It's imbalanced. Once you find out those underlying root causes of the imbalances in your body, you can begin the healing process. It does not happen overnight, but it will happen within about 12 to 16 weeks as all of those red blood cells start to turn over.
Exactly. And I love how you talk about how our own bodies, every one of us, we have the potential to self-heal. We can heal ourselves. Of course, we need to provide it with what it needs, but our bodies have the opportunity, if we give it to them, to heal. And unless we've totally just got to the point where there's no coming back, we can heal ourselves. And I love how you're helping so many people figure that out. It's not, we can. It takes time, of course, like you said, 12 to 18 weeks to see a change, but it is so possible, and so many people have done it, and so many more people are going to do it because of people like you and me, how we're getting this out there, and people are understanding that, yes, modern medicine is very important for crises, for emergencies. Use it because it must be used and save millions of lives. But any other type of metabolic disease, it takes time. And if you are willing to use that time and let your body heal by giving it what it needs, you'll get better. You will get better. I love your explanations. I love how you talk, and I appreciate more than you know for you coming onto this show and talking with us, Stephen. It was just a great opportunity. Before we let you go, please let my listeners where they can find more about you and what you're doing.
So my main kind of hub is just StephenCabral.com, and maybe we can link that up in the show notes, but it's just Stephen, it's StephenCabral.com, and you'll find the podcast tab there, and that's what I recommend. Just, if you love listening to podcasts, like the one we're on right now, keep that going. Keep all these podcasts, keep all the books, keep all the articles, just keep learning, because as you learn, you're going to start to say, like, okay, I understand the pattern here. I see how people begin to heal, and it's going to then motivate you. And I think that's what it's really about for all of us. And then the main product, meaning the place to start I always recommend is just the Dr. Cabral Detox. And you can go to drcabraldetox.com, or again, just listen to all of the free content first. Just go to the podcast, check it out. I want you to really learn more, get more education. So the main hub is, again, just StephenCabral.com. And Ben, I wanted to thank you, because I think the work that you're doing is phenomenal. I really appreciate how you're teaching people too about all of these whole foods and getting back to nature and using all of those things. And we need more people like yourself out there.
Thanks a ton, Stephen, and thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.